Hello, everyone, and welcome to my channel. This is an educational channel, and we examine some of the works of some heroes of mine, people who spent their whole life working on something and came up with a great product, but nobody ever paid any attention to them, or very few people. And so their tour de forces, their grand unified theories, their cosmologies, their theories of everything, their magnum opuses are standing in line to be thrown on the scrap heap of history. And so we're going to try to shed some light on these, and that's what we do on this channel. Today is our 98th video that we've done on the book called Mastering the Core Teachings of the Buddha by Dr. Daniel Ingram. And I actually don't know how popular or not popular this book is, but I know he's got an online forum and some things going, but the book is just kind of too hardcore, gung-ho to really get a lot of traction out there in the popular world. So I'm figuring that most likely you haven't heard of it. The only reason I'd heard of the book is because my friend was a friend of his. We both at one point lived in Chapel Hill, North Carolina in the 90s and the aughts. And so I didn't know him, I don't believe, although I haven't seen a picture, so I'm not sure. But a friend of mine turned me on to this a long time ago. Before maybe it was even a book. It might have been like just on the web or something. But it's got kind of everything that you need to know about Buddhist practice. Not so much about Buddhist religion per se, but about their techniques and their maps, the things that you can use regardless of what religion, if any, that you espouse. And we are getting toward the end of the book, but he was just talking about the Brahma Viharas, which are, I think, just kind of like ethical aspects or something. And he's trying to explain how they plug into doing magic. And so I think he's really kind of introducing these four: loving kindness, compassion, joyful appreciation, and equanimity. And then we'll take over where we left off yesterday. Still, you may be reasonably asking, why is it that you view the Brahma Viharas as being the Buddhist answer to the question of meditative training that most likely leads to optimal magic? Why, thank you, I am glad you asked this. A, the Brahma Viharas are generally in the category of private magic, and even if you make them public magic by, say, chanting out the phrases in some hopefully appropriate public context, hardly anyone would object or find anything odd in wishing others well or in the other three practices. Still, the category of private magic is a relative one, as the field of causality is unavoidably interconnected. Actions done in your own mind stream are guaranteed to have implications for the rest of the world. B, the Brahma Viharas are not specific regarding the question of immediate versus delayed magic, and leaving that question open makes for a more workable situation. C, likewise, the Brahma Viharas are non-specific, meaning that they do not lay out any criteria for the outcome beyond the most general and fundamental benefit, a quality that nearly always makes magical workings easier. D, the Brahma Viharas are not necessarily unnatural, though many people might be surprised to learn the depth to which we can generate those feelings in the body and some of the other unusual experiences we can have while practicing them, such as experiencing them radiating throughout space as light, etc. The Brahma Viharas, the Brahma Viharas are not likely to come up against anyone's field of disbelief, since who would really disbelieve that we would want to cultivate positive qualities or take issue with our wishing for positive outcomes and balance of mind? F. The Brahma Viharas are not likely to lead to moral conflict, except occasionally with the category of the enemy, see below, and thus, with this single exception, we can generally proceed in their cultivation completely free from moral conflict, but rather with a deep and galvanizing sense of moral imperative. G. Since the Brahma Viharas cultivate what are clearly our deepest wishes and highest aspirations for ourselves and others, they are automatically synchronous, meaning completely in line with the intentions of the object of the practice. H. Given that the Brahma Viharas lend themselves to strongly positive feelings, they are positively reinforcing. And being positively reinforcing, they naturally lend themselves to strong single-mindedness, confidence, and concentration. I. Given that there is no time when the Brahma Viharas are not a good idea, anytime they are practiced, they are well-timed and therefore timely. Given that the Brahma Viharas require little formal setup beyond the phrases and the feelings themselves, and given that as part of the setup it is easy to recognize that these are a good idea, it is hard to imagine easier magic to set up properly. K. As to plausibility, it is possible that some aspects of our wishes, say for the happiness of all beings to expand and increase, may seem implausible. However, that we wish this for ourselves and others is not implausible at all, and that all beings wish for contentment, freedom from misery, etc., for themselves is also not implausible. This practice is about cultivating the feeling of those wishes, with those positive qualities being their own reward, even if you naively imagine that they do nothing other than simply occur within us. So, properly understood, plausibility is easily met. As to the influence clouds that emanate from the wishes of other beings, given that the Brahma Viharas at their core automatically resonate with the deepest wishes of all beings, no better natural resonance and amplification could possibly be found. L. As to luck, I am perhaps being a bit magical and optimistic in my thinking here, but it is easy to imagine, should there be any such thing as luck, that luck favors the most fundamentally beneficial workings. The workings of karma are imponderable, but the conditioning within the agent during the practice of the Brahma Viharas is extremely meritorious and therefore beneficial. M. The last factors are to make the Brahma Viharas familiar and to practice them in a conducive setting. The first is simply a question of repetition, and the latter is realizing that any setting may be a good place to practice these qualities that are so needed in this aching world. And, in short, the Brahma Viharas naturally meet all the criteria that make for the most powerful and beneficial magic. And it is hard to come up with anything else that does this in quite that way other than turning attention to directly comprehending the true nature of all sensations, as is frequently mentioned at the end of texts that deal with magic, such as the fruits of the contemplative life. Oh, in summary, it is highly recommended that you make some time for the Brahma Viharas. Sold. Given that you are now completely inspired to try these, or further develop them if you are already familiar with them, by the amazing power of this airtight logic of staggering rhetorical force, it is worth knowing how to practice them. Excellent instructions can be found in the Visuddhimagga by Buddhaghosa, Chapter 9, Buddhist Meditation in Theory and Practice by Paravihara Vajrayanana Mahathera, chapters 20 and 21. That's again called Buddhist Meditation in Theory and Practice. And Path to Deliverance by Nyanatiloka, pages 100 to 110. A summary of the basic instructions appears below. A. Pick one of the Brahma Viharas, specifically 1. Loving kindness, that feeling of heartfelt well-wishing. 2. Compassion, that wish for the end of suffering for all beings equally. 3. Joyous appreciation, that gladness for and delighting in what is good in the lives of others. 4. Equanimity, that impartiality and peaceful acceptance that helps counterbalance the first 3 Brahma Viharas and is its own reward. It is recommended that these be practiced in the order presented, but there is no harm in choosing the one that seems most appropriate to the time and going back and filling in with the others later. It is also highly recommended to practice them all, as they tend to balance aspects of each other that otherwise can become imbalanced if we practice them selectively. Okay, now that was part A. Part B is pick a comfortable meditation posture if possible. C. Reflect on the dangers of the quality of the mind that the chosen Brahma Vihara most directly opposes. 1 for loving kindness, loving friendliness. Did I say? I think I said loving kindness, but it does say loving friendliness. Directly opposes hatred. Reflect on the dangers of harboring hatred. 2. Compassion directly opposes cruelty. Reflect on the dangers of harboring cruelty. 3. Joyous appreciation directly opposes jealousy and envy. Reflect on the dangers of harboring jealousy and envy. 4. Equanimity directly opposes both grasping and hatred. Reflect on the dangers of grasping, greed or not letting go, and hatred. Equanimity helps counterbalance getting overwhelmed by the feelings that the first 3 can sometimes bring up. It also helps prevent the other Brahma Viharas practices from becoming exercises in unskillful sentimentalization or sentimentalism and codependency. D. Each of the Brahma Viharas is associated with a specific phrase that is used to cultivate the sentiment until the feeling of the Brahma Vihara can itself be taken as the meditation object. And so the next step is to learn the phrases for that Brahma Vihara. The phrases may be modified to suit your inclinations and appear in various forms in various places. Each phrase is used to extend the quality of the Brahma Vihara to various categories of beings. So a blank is included in the phrase that we fill in with the appropriate category as we progress through them. Here I render them as 1 for loving friendliness. May blank be happy. May blank be peaceful. May blank be safe. May blank live with ease. For compassion, may blank be free from suffering. May their suffering finally cease. For joyous appreciation, may the happiness and good fortune of blank always increase. For equanimity, blank are the true heirs of their karma. Blank's happiness depends on their actions and not upon my wishes for them. E. the phrases in the short form of the practice and then their resultant feelings are extended towards various beings and classes of beings in this traditional order. 1. Towards ourselves first. For example, may I be happy, etc. Equanimity is the exception, as directing this type of equanimity towards ourselves is philosophically problematic. 2. Towards a friend. Try to avoid those you feel sexual attraction toward, and that tends to distract from the practice. So if we get better at this, we might try to sort those out later on. 3. Towards a neutral person. 4. Towards a hostile person, or one towards whom you bear ill will, traditionally called enemy, perhaps a bit more generously, worthy opponent. 5. Toward all beings everywhere. The long monastic versions of these practices go into great detail about the categories of beings in various directions and are a mighty fine time. When working with the categories in this way, it is traditional to stick to the easy categories first, developing them until the feeling is strong, and then shifting to the harder categories when we feel confident. This is in keeping with the magical principles of familiarity and confidence. That was F. And G, we may also extend the feelings in various directions. 1 in front, 2 in back, 3 to the sides, 4 above, 5 below, 6 all around, pervading everything everywhere. It's interesting here that he just says to the sides, doesn't indicate left and right, but he does say front, back, above, and below. So that's why there's only 6, because then there's also all around, pervading everything everywhere. Okay, H. As we repeat the phrases, we try to connect to the fundamental feeling indicated by the words. I. We must guard against both the far enemies, emotions like greed and hatred listed above, that the Brahma Viharas directly oppose, and the near enemies, which are facsimiles of the Brahma Viharas, that are not the genuine quality, but instead problematic impostors. These are: 1. For loving friendliness, the near enemy is grasping desire, attachment, or lust. For compassion, the near enemy is pity. For joyous appreciation, the near enemy is also desire. And for equanimity, the near enemy is indifference. J. As the feeling of the Brahma Vihara grows, we turn that feeling into an object of shamatha practice, such that we take that feeling and develop it directly, working with it, expanding it, gently coaxing it through any blockages or sticking points we find, extending it through our body until it pervades our whole body, and finally expanding the feeling everywhere. This is good advice for any jhana practice. K. In this way, we may use the first 3 Brahma Viharas to attain up to the 3rd jhana, as they still contain a pleasant feeling of some sort. We can take this type of equanimity to the 4th jhana and beyond, as equanimity is the basis of the formless realms. As barriers, distractions, or issues arise during the practice, we open, we soften, and we connect with the deep and fundamental feeling of the chosen Brahma Vihara, and slowly extend that one through whatever blockages we encounter to reach everyone and pervade everywhere. Much additional accessible material may be found in Sharon Salzberg's Loving Kindness, the Revolutionary Art of Happiness, which, while not mentioning how to develop metta into the deep jhanic states still outlines many useful aspects of the practice. It is my deep wish that you, the reader, fully excel in all these practices and thus benefit tremendously from your labors, realizing that your happiness ultimately depends on your actions. One of the remarkable things about the Brahma Viharas is that their practice can automatically start to do what I advocated in the chapter, Harnessing the Energy of the Defilements, in which I recommended finding the skillful aspects of emotions that we might otherwise label as unskillful. It turns out that enough good Brahma Vihara practice can begin to show us the hidden tendencies toward kindness, empathy, compassion, and equanimity that underlie either more difficult emotions, other more difficult emotions. We notice that these beneficial qualities cultivated by the Brahma Viharas are what those unskillful emotions were trying to accomplish in some way. And so the Brahma Viharas can help transform our hearts to connect more naturally with some of the most skillful magic there is. I highly recommend spending at least a few minutes every day with at least one of the Brahma Viharas. They can be done in nearly all circumstances of daily life, but as always, be careful when doing any meditation while performing a task such as driving or using dangerous equipment. Loving friendliness practices are also among what are called in the Theravada the 4 guardian meditations, sort of the Theravada meditative equivalent of a magic circle of protection. For the actual source of the practice, check out Sutra Nipada 1.8, as well as Chapter 9 of the Visuddhimagga, or Chapter 8, Section 5 of the Vimuddhamagga, which have great instructions on all the Brahma Viharas. The other 3 guardian meditations are reflection on the positive qualities of the Buddha to inspire faith, recollection and contemplation of death to inspire effort and reduce attachment, and reflections on the loathsomeness of the body to counter lust, attachment, and vanity. As you can see, the Theravada has no fear of the dark aspects of life, and these practices, which may initially ring a bit oddly to the contemporary ear, can be quite beneficial when done properly. Some Pali chanting of some or all of these was part of the daily ritual in most of the traditional Theravada retreats I attended in traditional monasteries, and I have learned to appreciate these practices. Similar protective meditations exist in the other Buddhist traditions also. Okay, that's the end of that section. And then we have a short section here that is called Bodhicitta as Magic. The same paradigm that applies to the Brahma Viharas can apply to relative bodhicitta, that wish to achieve Buddhahood for the benefit and awakening of all beings. The Mahayana is distinguished by its emphasis on bodhicitta, which is possibly bodhicitta, not sure, and so contains many practices specifically designed to cultivate not only the wish and aspiration of relative and ultimate bodhicitta, but also the living experience of bodhicitta, much as we can also cultivate the Brahma Viharas. The same logic that argues for the Brahma Viharas being among the highest forms of skillful magic applies equally to the cultivation of bodhicitta. There are many bodhicitta practices, and you can find them in countless books on the Mahayana, as well as in the Wikiyana, but it is considered crucial in the Mahayana to receive instructions on relative and ultimate bodhicitta from living masters, as there is truly something magical about hanging out with those who have learned these well. Further, we can cultivate the wisdom that realizes ultimate bodhicitta, with this being the highest form of magic there is. On that note, this section is called Vipassana as Magic. Finally, the greatest benefit of having the level of mental control, galvanized intent, and concentration that lead to the more exotic powers is that we may turn this well-tuned mind to wisdom, to the understanding of impermanent suffering and no self, which are the three characteristics. Wisdom is listed as the greatest of the powers, the ultimate reason for learning to cultivate them. In this, we rise to the fourth jhana, or rise to and leave the eighth jhana and see the true nature of experience, allowing us to cut through delusion and untangle the knot of suffering and ignorance. This is the final punchline of many a great sutra for good reason. Further, wisdom teachings have their own magic to them. Perceiving sensations clearly transforms them into something more workable than the way we typically perceive them. Perceiving emotional energies as patterns of transient, natural sensations can make them vastly more workable. Attaining deep, transformative insights and the stages of awakening can themselves shift our way of perceiving issues that we might otherwise have tried to solve at a more mundane, magical level. Feeling deeply into any shifting disturbance in our field of experience can help resolve those disturbances. Further, the texts state that realization provides defense against some of the magic of those of lesser stages of realization or magic performed by the unrealized. Sometimes the best magic is not explicitly magical, but more in the realm of vipassana. Both more formal magic based on concentration, particularly the Brahma Viharas, and more insight-based magic have their uses, and trying to sort out which is better in any given situation is part of the adventure. These practices that confuse concentration and insight can be unusually profound. This combination of Vipassana and Brahma Vihara practice is also some of the cleanest, most powerful, and most karmically skillful protective magic around. Still, while practicing, keep morality at the front of your mind, and whatever you do in your practice will likely go vastly better. May all your intentions be for the benefit and awakening of all beings. And I believe, we still have a little bit of time. So that's the end of that. That's the end of that chapter. And as we are still in the autobiographical section of this book, section 6, I believe, we move to chapter 69, which is called Bhavana Society 2001 Retreat. Maybe this is the try that Dr. Ingram is going to be making to get around to that fourth cycle to arhantship. Having set all that up, I now return to my practice narrative, picking up the story with a 17-day Bhavana Society retreat I went on during the winter of 2001. I will take some time here to really describe that retreat, as it was important for me. It was the middle of my second year of medical school. My first marriage had unraveled, but that misfortune, though difficult and heartbreaking, could not dislodge the urgency I was feeling to meditate, and gave me the whole winter break to dedicate myself to practice. There were all sorts of interesting things I wanted to explore at that time, particularly some of the more kasana-based meditation concentration practices. Again, a kasana is like a colored ball or some colored object that you visualize. Up until that point, I would typically take such things as the breadth of attention of the various jhanas, or their more standard qualities, bliss, equanimity, spaciousness, etc., as object. But I really wanted to see what would happen if I got good at visualization, something I hadn't been great at, with hit or miss results most of the time. This one's hitting home because my visualization is not very good. I spent about the first week doing standard vipassana, which by that point meant shredding reality into little blips and fluxions while investigating the heck out of those, as I was in yet another of the many small path cycles that I was going through and needed to finish that one up. I then spent about a day or two after the review phase playing with the various formless realms that I knew well by that point. Got Nirodha Samapatti to prove to myself that I could, as it always seemed like such a surprise that it would actually happen. Mixed in with my vanity about practice was and is the predictable flip side of profound insecurity, and frankly, the astonishment that these experiences and attainments were real, happening, and available to an otherwise ordinary and flawed gringo such as myself. As an aside, I frequently encountered that odd sort of disbelieving after becoming a doctor, and would find myself driving to work thinking, am I really going into a hospital to take care of patients? I don't know anything about that. And then I would arrive at the emergency department and somehow know what to do. It turns out this sort of thinking is common in many people, particularly professionals, so it is not surprising that it should apply to meditators as well. Okay, now the next section is called Fire Kasana Practice, and we will talk about that tomorrow when we have another episode, and we will take over where we left off. So thanks for tuning in today.